but it got to a point where I wasn't giving 100% to either jobs. And I wasn't doing my best at the hospital, and I wasn't doing my best at Nom Nom Paleo. And I was like, and as a mom, I was like, I was just frayed at both ends. And so I was like, you know what? I have to quit. Like, this is just too much.
What would the world look like if people felt like they mattered? Welcome to the Lead with Love podcast, exploring what it means to lead with love in business and life. I'm your host, Jada Selner, and in this show, I'll share meaningful conversations to help you, the creative, the entrepreneur, the world changer, reach more people, go after your dreams, and serve your community with love. I appreciate you joining me. Now, let's get cozy and start today's episode. Ever wonder what it takes to make your side hustle your full-time hustle while working a graveyard shift, publishing New York Times bestselling books, and raising 2 kids? If you're looking to create work in a way that inspires you while still helping the community you serve without selling out who you are, then this episode is for you, because in today's conversation, I get cozy with my friend, Michelle Tam. Now, Michelle is the creator of the Saveur Award winning food blog, Nom Nom Paleo. And if you have not checked out her recipes, please go check them out. They are so delicious and tasty. And together with her husband, Henry Fong, she also produced a 2-time Webby Award-winning cooking app, authored 2 New York Times bestselling cookbooks, and was nominated for a James Beard Award. Now, Michelle has a degree in nutrition and food science from the University of California at Berkeley and a doctorate in pharmacy from UCSF. So for over a dozen years, she worked the graveyard shift at Stanford Hospital and Clinics as a night pharmacist before her side hustle, Nom Nom Paleo, actually became her main hustle. We talk about her new paleo-friendly sauces featured in Whole Foods, which I have seen in my neighborhood, Whole Foods. We also talk about how to talk to your kids about the food that we eat as a family, her unconventional ways of writing books with her husband, and the journey to building a blog into a business. So let's get cozy with Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Hey, I'm so excited to chat with you.
Yes. The last time that we talked, was it a Delta airline lounge or
It
what?
was. I think it was a Delta lounge. It was some sort of airport lounge.
Yes.
I think once I got the credit card that got me into lounges, I'm like, oh, this is a whole nother life.
It's a game changer. And I know we were both speaking at the Everything Food Conference over the summer, and we were trying to coordinate when we could meet each other, connect, and catch up. And somehow the last moment was like, let's meet. Our flights were leaving at the same time, going to San Francisco, and you're like, let's just meet in the airport lounge, which was perfect.
Lounge.
Yes. Felt very fancy. And I have the Chase Reserve card, which gives you access. It's priority pass. And it's so sweet because you have access to all these different lounges around the world. And we use them, and we know the ones that have like really good food options. And so when you experience airport lounges, you're like, I don't want to sit.
It's kind of a bummer though when you leave the lounge and then you go into coach and then you're like,
Yeah. Totally. And we've known each other for many, many years. When, I co-founded Simple Green Smoothies, we both live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we've been at similar health blogging events. And I know the first time we met at like your book launch many, many moons ago. And then the first time we hung out was at the ferry station in San Francisco,
And I remember when I met you, I immediately told Henry, who's like my husband and like partner and all the things. I was like, Jada is like this really zen, like loving person that kind of emanates like just like love and light, but she's also this kick-ass businesswoman. I was like, I love how those two things intersect, because I have no mind for business, which because we've discussed many things. And what was really great is when we had our last conversation, You were giving me advice on how to, I don't remember exactly how
team, growth, hiring, firing, probably.
It was like releasing with love or something. And I was like, oh yes, what a great way to put it. But I have to say, I took your advice and I used your advice also to hire someone very slowly and meticulously. And I'm very excited about, my new team member.
Oh, that makes me so happy. I know I sent you some documents too. I was like, just follow this. Yes. And anyone you need to let go of, release them with love. I am always talking about like the 5-minute fire with love.
Yes. And totally. Like, I think I'm just someone who's really, I think it's a combination of being loyal and lazy. And so I'm like, oh, I already hired this person and we're like pals and I don't want to piss them off, but it's just not working out. But maybe it's not that bad. I'll just keep things how they are. But I think having that conversation with you, I was like, no, I have to nip this in the bud. It's good for both of us. I can release, this team member to do what he wanted to do and follow his passion because it was not helping my business.
Yeah. And I think, in that conversation around team, it's like, if it's not working for you and it doesn't feel good to you, it also doesn't feel good to them, even though we think holding on to them is the right thing. It's like, yeah, they get to go do a thing where they feel super lit up or on fire or showing up. And it's just like, and also we have team members that come in for a season for our lives. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I really needed you for that year and you really helped me with XYZ, but now my business needs something different. So it's like, so I need someone different unless you're willing to, something that I learned from one of my coaches was to coach up or coach out. And, sometimes people are just like, nope, I don't want to do the thing that your business needs, which then is not a good fit. So I love that you took imperfect action to hire slowly and to release with love. That's awesome.
I did. I was very excited. Yeah. I learned this from my friend Jada.
And I'm so excited to talk more about just, you saying business is not like you're not good at it, but obviously you've been able to build something super magical that helps a lot of people. So we'll dive into the weeds of that. But speaking of releasing in love, what does leading with love mean to you? And how do you put love into practice in your business?
Well, I think everything that we create for Nom Nom Paleo, it's always something that we love. And it's something that we're really, really excited to work on and to share with everyone. So I feel like everything we do comes from a base of love. And I think when I discovered that I was kind of veering away from that was when I started learning about all these things that I was doing kind of quote unquote wrong on my blog. And I didn't know anything about SEO. And then when I started worrying about SEO, I realized that what I was creating was not from a place of love. So I've definitely, I dabbled in that and I was like, this is wrong. This feels wrong. And I'm going to just keep doing it the way I've been doing it. So for us, it's a really, we just want to create stuff that we just want to create delicious food and inspire people to get back in the kitchen. We also want to be a good example for our kids. I think we want our kids to see that we love what we do. And it's great to work hard on something, but it's even better when you're passionate and excited about the thing you're working hard on.
I love that. And I love that piece of being an example for your kids. That's something that even with my daughter, I'm just like, I love my work. And to be that example is super inspiring for them to see a different way of working, especially with, you've gone from being a professional drug dealer at night as a pharmacist at UCSF to actually running an online blog where most of your work is done in the kitchen and most of your work your family gets to eat, right? Yeah. So that's such a shift of what work looks like in this time, which I think is really powerful. And something that the New York Times said is you're the Martha Stewart of paleo.
What's funny is I think they said it kind of derisively, she's kind of like the she's somewhat of the Martha Stewart of Paleo, something like that. So it was kind of like a rah, rah. But then I think some other news agency just truncated it and said, yeah, she's the Martha Stewart of Paleo. I'm like, oh, see, yeah, nice. But when the New York Times originally said it, it was kind of snarky. But I was like, whatever, I'll take it. And then, just editing.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. And it's interesting, right? Because it's such a cool highlight line. And did you grow up with Martha Stewart? Like, did you follow her at all? I
definitely grew up with Martha Stewart, but it wasn't necessarily like who I wanted to be, because she's very refined and, and what I actually thought was funny is when years ago, her daughter and Jenny Hutt had this kind of parody show where it was called like, come on, Martha, like, please, Martha, where all they did was cap on like her mother. And so I thought that was actually really funny. But I mean, I definitely admire what she's grown and done as a, humongous brand. And that even though she went to prison, like she's come back and rebranded herself as someone like super cool that you'd want to like, hang out with. And, even Snoop Dogg wants to hang out with her.
Right.
So I think that she's pretty amazing. Like, I'm like, wow, she's one amazing lady.
I love that you even just highlighted that of like making a comeback and being able to rebrand yourself as more accessible. And I just think, when we've been in the public for so long, there's opportunities for innovation and just kind of refinding your center and like what really matters to you. Because sometimes we can get stuck in a way that the rest of the world sees us. And so, like celebrating her for making that shift and hanging out with Snoop Dogg in the kitchen.
Right. And people make fun of her Instagram because it's totally imperfect and it's got these wacky pictures and wacky captions. But I was like, no, I think that's amazing. Like she literally, obviously she's a very smart businesswoman, but at the same time, I feel like she doesn't give any F's about stuff. She's like, I'm Martha Stewart. This is what I want to do. Here it is. And people are like, okay.
Do you feel like for you, do you still care what people think? Because I know there's like a certain age, maybe like in our 50s, my mom keeps telling me that you start to get to this place where you don't care. But then she's like, well, I still kind of care, so I'm just curious, like, what is that for you also being like public online? You're doing Instagram stories, sharing what you're cooking in your kitchen for dinner and kind of sharing that. What is that? What is your relationship with
caring? Well, yeah. I think I used to care a lot. I think when I was before I was like a quote unquote public person, I would care a lot about what other people thought. But I think after kind of doing this for almost 10 years, I've totally either grown a thick skin or it's like people don't care that much about you. You know what I mean? Like the things that you think people obsess on because you obsess on these little minutia things about yourself, nobody cares. Like, it's like that zit on your face, right? That's all you can see when you look at your face, but no one else can see that. I mean, they might see like a little blemish, but they're like, whatever, that's just like a little part of it. And I think that's kind of how, if anything, I feel like I don't really care. I mean, obviously I don't want to do something. I don't want to like do something stupid, because that would just be something stupid that I don't want to, do. But it's not so much that I care what people think of me. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm explaining it.
Yeah. Was there a specific moment when you realized that people don't care as much as you thought?
Yeah, I think anytime something happens that I feel I'm like, oh, this is such a huge thing and everyone's going to be so mad. And then it blows over and it's no big deal. Like I think when our app first came out and like I think it crashed because it was the next iOS update and it like broke our app or something happened, which we thought was catastrophic. Like, we just realized that nobody really cared. As long as you're transparent and open with people and like, no, this is the situation. Apple updated their iOS and it broke our app, but we're working as hard as we can to fix it. Like people were like, okay. And then they just moved on. And so I think like there have been lots of situations like that. I'm like, yeah. And that's what we try to teach our kids. Like the worst thing you think that can happen is really not that bad. So I think you have to stop kind of playing small all the time and just kind of reach out and try to do, the things that scare you. because the thing holding you back is not as bad as you think.
Yeah. And I know you stumbled upon paleo, the way of eating, in the summer of 2010. And previously you majored in nutrition and food science at Berkeley, and then got a doctorate in clinical pharmacy at UCSF. Like, leaning into the paleo world, did you have any hesitations to avoiding beans, grains, sugar, all of those pieces? Like,
oh, totally. Like when Henry was the one that discovered paleo first, and he just kind of found it because he was doing P90X, and he was like writing a blog about the different people in P90X just to kind of keep himself interested and keep himself accountable. And so he stumbled upon Mark Sisson, who came up with primal, like the whole primal lifestyle and all the primal kitchen condiments. And he was like, hey, I found this way of eating and it sounds kind of up my alley and I'm going to try it. But, it's kind of cutting out grains and it's eating, lots of vegetables and healthy meats and healthy fats. And I'm like, what? That is like the opposite of everything I've ever been taught as being healthy. I'm the one with the nutrition major, the nutrition degree. But, if you want to try it, you can try it. But I was totally skeptical, and I was like, this sounds crazy. But then he did it, and he got a 6-pack, and he was feeling really great. And we had both started on this kind of 90-day kind of he did the P90X for 90 days. And then I did kind of the girl version with Chalene Johnson.
Yes.
And you had to do a before and after photo at the beginning and end of your 90-day journey. And he was like, look at mine. And I took my picture and I was like, oh my gosh, I look worse than I did 90 days before. And I was the one that was counting all my calories and, calorie in and calorie out. And it was kind of eye-opening. And so I was like, maybe I'll try this. But I totally went in, totally skeptical. And then when I tried it, I felt so much better. I was like, oh, I've been living in the matrix. Like, everyone needs to know about this.
Right.
That was really annoying for a little bit.
Right. So with that shift, because you started blogging or sharing your recipes that same year, is that right?
Yeah.
So
in October, I think I went paleo on an Alaskan cruise in June, and then I started the blog in October.
Okay. So what was the moment when you knew you were like, I'm going to start a blog and start sharing these recipes? And I'm sure you were doing it very imperfectly, working totally a full-time job.
And there was I was working nights at Stanford Hospital. And I think I was just like, I'm going to start a paleo blog. Like, literally I just said, I'm going to start a paleo blog. And we were in the kitchen. And then Henry was like, oh yeah, what would you call it? And I was like, Nom Nom Paleo. And he's like, huh? Like, what's a nom nom? I'm like, when something tastes so great that you're just like eating it and you can't talk and you're just going nom 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 nom. He's like, okay. And so I just went to work not thinking anything of it. Like, I just, I blurt out things all the time. But because he had been doing his fitness blog, and before that he did like a daddy blog, he bought the domain name at nomnompaleo.com. And then he set up a Tumblr blog for me because he's like, oh, this is the easiest way. And I know that she will potentially keep doing it if it's simple and she doesn't have to learn anything. And so I was just posting stuff on Tumblr. I didn't think anyone was reading it. I had no one. I mean, I thought of it as just kind of like a food diary for myself. And I was like, oh, this is just a good way for me to keep track of where I go out to eat. Because at first I wasn't really cooking my stuff because I like to eat, but I didn't like to cook. And then when I realized I couldn't go out and eat paleo effectively, I was like, shoot, I have to start cooking. So I started paleofying recipes in like my super big cookbook collection that I never cooked out of. And then I started just creating my own recipes. But I never thought anyone would read it. And I just would swear all the time because I couldn't do it in my real life. And it just kind of grew on like the whole timing, because this all happened in 2010. And I think peak paleo was probably around 2012, 2013 or so. So I think a lot of things just kind of aligned, and that's how it got to be more popular. But I didn't even move off of Tumblr until, I'm going to say 3 years ago, when Tumblr, I think Tumblr had been bought out, but then I think they were bought out by Yahoo, which was going down the tubes. And I was like, shoot, we better move to WordPress, even though it's nice and free. It's like, I think we have to start putting money in it.
I love how all in you were with just staying on the site that you started on. And, and I'm also super inspired by your journey because I know that you're a foodie. My husband and I were foodies and we love to eat out all the time. And so I'm like, oh, there's hope for me. I'm like, I don't like cooking. Like I want people to make all these like amazing meals. And I've even hired personal chefs to make some of the meals from your cookbook. Cause I'm like, we want to eat Paleo Whole30. Can you please like make these meals, which were so good, but there's hope for me to like get into the kitchen and cook. So I'm super inspired by that, which is one reason why.
And so that's kind of the whole angle that I always take in recipe creation and in our cookbooks and our app. Like I always think of myself as my target audience, like someone who loves to eat, but is lazy and doesn't want to cook. And so I always try to make sure my recipes work the first time. So I've been testing them. And also I get immediate feedback if they don't work once I post them. But that's why we also have step-by-step pictures, and our books have like cartoons and butt jokes, because we just want it to be light and encouraging and fun, but also understanding that people are busy and they don't have all this time to spend in the kitchen.
Yeah. And what was the moment when you knew that you were onto something that was actually working? So you're posting on Tumblr and you're thinking no one's reading your butt jokes and your recipes. You're just kind of swearing, kind of doing your undercover blogging.
I think when I first realized that it was potentially getting bigger was a mom sent me a picture of her kid wearing Nom Nom Paleo socks, because we had made some Nom Nom Paleo socks, kind of like, I was like, oh, this is a fun thing to do. And I think we sold some, but then we gave away a whole bunch. But it was like a little 8-year-old who was wearing Nom Nom Paleo socks, and they're supposed to be knee highs, but for this kid, they were like little thigh highs. And they're like, oh, this is your number one fan. And I'm like, what? What is this kid doing reading my blog? Like, it's filled with curse words and all sorts of raunchy stuff. Like, why? And that's when I was like, oh, wow, maybe people are reading. And that's when I actually decided to cut the curse words out. And I was resistant at first because I was like, oh, this is me. And this is just how I am. If you don't like it, you can leave. But then I think when I saw these kids were reading it, I was like, well, I'll reach a bigger, and I actually think it's really important for kids to get excited about cooking and kind of realizing how food makes them feel, that I was like, nope, we'll cut the curse words and we'll keep it family friendly. We'll still keep it snarky, but we'll keep it family friendly.
What are the things that you've said to your kids to let them notice how food makes them feel?
I think we're just I think initially when we first started paleo and we were super annoying, we're like, this is bad and this is good. And that did not go over well at all, especially with my younger son who's very stubborn. But basically we would say, okay, these are the healthy foods that we're going to eat at home. But okay, so let's say you go to a party, and we do let our kids, when they're out in the wild, they can, make their own decisions, because we don't want to be helicopter parents. And part of being parents is you have to, release them out to make their own choices. But say like my younger son, who does have a gluten intolerance, comes back and has had like pizza and cupcakes. Like, yeah, I know you liked the taste of those foods, but, now that it's a few hours later, like you're cranky and your stomach hurts. And then like a few days later, he'll get like a canker sore. And so we're like, yeah, this is probably tied to, the foods that we ate at the party. And, it tasted good at the time, but, now there are repercussions to it. And so, or, other times, like, let's say he would have like some sort of like meltdown. We're like, see, this might be because you just had that giant bag of candy and, that can kind of happen. And so we always tried to kind of point out kind of objectively what was happening and how it related to what he just ate. And so at first we were like, oh, this is all, the kids aren't listening. But I think they do listen. And I think they do pay attention because it's not just me saying something. Like they actually feel these things and they can see the correlation. And the more times they tested it, it kept on happening. So that's kind of how we do it. Like, I think like kids, no one wants to hear like, you can't do this, you can't do that, or this is bad, or that's bad. Like they kind of want to test it themselves to see like, is this really true? Or are you just saying this?
Yes.
And so I think now like my younger son, he is actually really good about self-regulating and he doesn't want to eat gluten because even though he knows, a donut and all this other stuff tastes really good, it can cause all sorts of problems. So we found all of the, I think, gluten-free bakeries like within a 50-mile radius of like our house.
Nice. Oh, I love that. Was there any protesting? So it's like, your husband starts, then you get into it. Do the kids jump right on the paleo bandwagon with you at the same time? You're like, this is what mom's eating?
No, like we actually just did it, just the two of us. And, when I was blogging about it, people were like, oh, well, you have kids. How do you feed your kids? How do you feed your kids? And I was like, this blog is not about my kids. It's about me and how I feed myself. But the more I started hearing that question, I was like, yeah, how am I feeding my kids? Like, why is it okay that I'm making something separate for my kids that I wouldn't eat myself? And that's when I was like, oh, maybe we should get the whole family on board. And so, my older son is kind of a people pleaser. So he's like, okay, Ellie, whatever. But then my younger son was like, wait, what do you mean I can't have mac and cheese and like chicken nuggets and all this other junky stuff that you used to give us because you didn't want to have an argument? So, we had to kind of come up with a compromise initially with my younger son because my husband, I think one day while I was sleeping because I was working that night, he's like, oh, don't worry, I will take care of it. I will transition Ollie to paleo during the day while you're sleeping. I'm like, oh, okay, good luck. And apparently that day, when Henry put his foot down and said, this is our house and these are my rules. And when you're in our house, you have to eat what we eat. And my 3-year-old at the time was like, well, then I'm not living here anymore. And he literally walked out the door and shut the door.
How old was he?
He was 3. And so my husband was like, maybe this isn't working. And so the compromise we came up with was we knew that he loved scrambled eggs and he would eat roasted broccoli. And we were okay with him eating this at every meal because it was super easy for us to make just some scrambled eggs. And we always had roasted broccoli because it's like our default vegetable. And so we would always have him taste whatever we were making for dinner. But if he didn't like it, he could just have scrambled eggs and roasted broccoli. And he eventually got tired of it because he also wanted to have whatever we were eating. And so, that was the transition. And now everybody eats what I make. I mean, his form of protest is just to eat really, really slow, but he still eats it. So I'm like, whatever, that's fine. You can take as long as you want and you can have the fat congeal on your plate if you're okay with eating it. But that's what we do now. But I mean, I think it was kind of an eye-opener that everybody just kept on saying, what do you feed your kids? What do you feed your kids? And it was something that I just didn't want to address until it just got to be too much. I was like, okay, fine, I'll address it.
I love that you found like the constraint of what he was willing to eat that you agreed with. And I mean, roasted broccoli and scrambled eggs until we hear something differently. So you made a pivot from being a full-time pharmacist to going all in on your blog. I feel like every time that we would, reconnect and catch up, you were still a pharmacist. You were still drug dealing at night and you're like a New York Times bestselling author. So how many years did you juggle the two of your graveyard shift, blogging, 2 kids, preparing paleo meals for your family? How long did that dance go on for?
That was for 4 years. I quit, I think in 2014, 15. I can't remember. See, it's so bad too because I work nights. And so my memory is not fantastic because when you work nights, there's all sorts of terrible things that happen like to your metabolism and your circadian rhythms. So my memory is also one of those things. I'm like, oh no. But I think it was 4 years.
Yeah. And were there any doubts, fears, insecurities that came up when you decided to actually officially quit?
Totally. I mean, that's kind of how, like, that's why Henry, even though he helps me with so many things on, Nom Nom Paleo, like he does the graphics and the photos and the design, he hasn't quit his job yet. And I think that's part of why I was okay with quitting when I did, was because we still had someone who is like, quote unquote, in the traditional workforce. But it got to a point where I wasn't giving 100% to either jobs. And I wasn't doing my best at the hospital and I wasn't doing my best at Nom Nom Paleo. And I was like, and as a mom, I was just frayed at both ends. And so I was like, you know what? I have to quit. Like, this is just too much. And plus, like, my parents were like, we're getting older and we can't help with childcare as much. So it was all the things together.
What was the process in making that big leap for you? Because I know, going to school, all the way up to doctorate and then being like, okay, I'm going to let go of that and focus on the blog. What was your process to move through to get to that quit moment?
I think it was I also was so tired. Like, I think I kind of got to the point where I was kind of just burned out. Because it used to be that I would work nights 7 nights in a row, and then I'd have 7 days off, and then I'd work nights again. And then I would work when I was like not sleeping, so it was all, and then I was always jet lagged all the time too, because I was always flipping from, night shift to day shift and being a full-time mom. So it just got to be where I just physically and mentally, I was like, I can't do all the things. And I also, because I quit pharmacy in 2014, I'd already been working as a pharmacist for 14 years. So I felt like I had kind of gotten my money's worth of my degree. And I was like, okay, it's fine. I will keep my license just in case. And so I had all of these kind of backups just in case. But it got to be where I was really kind of checked out at work. Like, I was doing my job and nobody, like, there were no terrible drug errors or anything, but it really was like, I was just clocking in and clocking out. And I was just like, I'm just doing this just so I have health insurance. You know what I mean? It wasn't because I loved it. And I just dreaded going to work. And I just wanted to do all things Nom Nom Paleo or hang out with my family. Like, that was what was driving me. So I was just like, no, I got to quit. And also, I think we won our first Webby Award, and it was going to be where I couldn't attend the ceremony because I was working nights and no one could work for me. And I was like, this is bananas. Like, I don't want to look back and say I wasn't able to go to the Webby Awards because I had to work a night shift. And so that was kind of all those things.
And I love just kind of painting the symptoms of that come up when it's time to reassess and make that shift of the burnout, of being, checked out, of dreading the work, of it getting in the place of you being present to the things that really matter to you. And
like resentment and contempt, like all those terrible feelings, I want that.
Like, maybe they should have released you in love because you're like, yes, I'm ready to go. And you're like holding on because they need me. But that happens, right? Where we're like, we don't want to let people down. And then in the end, we let ourselves down and we're not feeling great.
And they can always find another pharmacist. It wasn't like, you know what I mean? Like, I think I just kind of, I held on for a long time.
And it's totally normal. I feel like when people have clarity of where they want to go, and sometimes it's like a 3-year transition, 2 to 3 years until you finally like make the leap. And so that's totally typical. Now, I want to talk a little bit about building community online. You have almost 480,000 followers on Instagram, 440,000 Facebook fans, and I'd love to hear about what you think you've done really well and then what you've tried that maybe didn't work so well in terms of building your community online that we can learn from the not so great moments of building community.
Let me think. So I think I definitely just try to, like, I hop on to Facebook. Like, we have a weekly Facebook Live cooking demo. So we just hop on in our kitchen and I kind of invite people into my house and they just see me cooking with my kids. But I think I just try to share stuff that I really try to find, that I hope people find are useful or delightful. And I try not to overshare, but I also feel because I try not to overshare, I may not be as vulnerable as I need to be, because I definitely only share certain things. Like, I share about food and I don't really share about kind of personal, like, I mean, not super personal stuff, but I think that's also, you know, the culture I was brought up in. Like, Chinese people don't talk about their feelings or hard times. Do you know what I mean? Like, they don't complain. They just put their head down and they work hard. And I think also when I was I was like, oh, there's all this SEO stuff I need to do. Like, I found that like a lot of my recipes were getting more and more generic in terms of what I was writing, because I didn't want to offend people. And I didn't, you know, I wanted to make sure like the Google search bots could find my stuff. But then I was like, this is not lighting a fire in me. And I don't think it's connecting with my readers. Because I think what a lot of the things that my readers connect with me is like, I think they connect with my personality and my voice. And when I tried to mute that, I think that backfired.
Yeah. And I also think that there's something in having boundaries online too, right? That you can have what you share and what you don't share. And like, I've had conversations with my daughter recently on that of like, you need to check in with me and ask, you know, for permission to share certain things, or, you know, so it's just like being very aware of those type of conversations, of protecting our family and our personal lives, but then also how much people soak up all the vulnerability, rawness, and realness. And so it's such a fine line, and we have to define that for ourselves, because I think that the conversation that you're saying is like, I need to just be more of me, and more of you could also be like, I also am a mama bear and I protect my family and I don't share all of that part of our life, but I will share this, and this will be helpful and this will be delightful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so are there any other, in terms of creating content and engaging with your community online, you have your Facebook Live where you bring people into the kitchen. Do you also do that on Instagram, or how do you, to me, you know, I always call social media like dance floors. So are Instagram and Facebook like your two core dance floors where you share the delightful and helpful content?
Yeah. And I think my email newsletter is probably another big place that I do that, just because I write a very plain Jane email without any photos or graphics, but it literally is just me typing out like, hey, this is, you know, the new recipe or some new thing that's happening every week. And then I also have like a Sunday meal planning email newsletter, but it is me writing these notes to my audience. And I think some people don't realize that it is kind of a blanket email, because I have this reader who's this 80-year-old guy in New Jersey who responds to every single email of mine, where he'll be like, oh, curry's not my thing, but thanks. And I'm like, oh, no worries. And so I do write back to every single person who writes to me, but it's just like a simple, like little note checking in, like, hey, I was just in Austin and this is where I ate, but here's something you should cook at home, or whatever. Like, I think that's also a way that I like connecting with my readers.
And how, you know, it's almost been 10 years. So how do you stay creatively connected to your work and coming up with new content or new recipes? Do you have certain things that inspire you, a certain, you know, habits or rituals that you have in place to kind of get you to that place, or research? I'm just curious what that process is for you when you've been creating the same type of content for almost a decade.
I know. I think I think travel and eating out is my number one favorite way to stay inspired because I love traveling and I travel for food and to try different things. And I love that my job has enabled me to do that. I think it's just a blessing. And I think I also get a lot of feedback from readers. I occasionally do polls. I'm like, well, what would you want me to create? And they're very good about telling me what they want. And a lot of times it's not necessarily stuff that I want to create, but it pushes me to do stuff. Like Henry, if it was up to me, I would always just make these ugly pot stews because they're fast, easy, tasty, but they're totally ugly. So Henry's really good at pushing me to kind of make stuff that is kind of outside my wheelhouse that I don't like to do because I can't get it on the first or second try. But he knows that eventually that if I keep at it, I'll do it. But I'm someone that is I'm like, I don't know. I want the easy way out.
Right.
But he's like, no, try this. Like my paleo pot stickers, I think is a really good example of that. Because I was like, oh, I'll do a pot sticker stir fry because I can make like the contents of the pot sticker be a delicious stir fry. He's like, no, you should make it into an actual pot sticker because you have this, paleo scallion pancake dough that can probably be used as the pot sticker. And I was like, I don't know. I don't really want to waste my time, trying it. He's like, I don't know. I think it would be a big hit. I think people would like it. And then I think one of my readers emailed me after one of my email newsletters and said, hey, I actually used your, scallion pancake dough to make pot stickers and I used it as the dough. And I was like, I guess it works. And so then I was like, hey, Henry, I'm going to do it because this reader told me that it worked. I've been telling you like 10 million times, like, well, sometimes I need to hear someone else tell me.
Yes, it's so true. And I love that you have him in your corner to push you into like that growth edge and being creative and inspired. And also my mouth is like watering. I'm like, paleo pot stickers. Yes.
They're actually, and I even say in the recipe, I was like, this is not an easy recipe and you may have to break it up in several days and you may have to recruit help. But if you do it the way I say, they will turn out and you will be delighted.
And what's your process for, the online space is always changing, algorithms, people seeing you on Facebook and Instagram. Is there anything that's like on your radar right now as you look ahead to the trends and changes that are happening online?
I'm someone that doesn't really look ahead and kind of forecast. Like I have no editorial calendar. Like people always think that's crazy. Like literally I'll come up with a bunch of different things, but sometimes the next recipe is just something that I create that week. And so I'm someone that kind of pivots. If there's something I like and it changes, I'll try to kind of figure out like how to keep doing the thing I like. The things I don't like, I do need someone to push me to do. But if it's something that I already really enjoy, like I really like Instagram a lot. And I know the algorithm changes and all that. But, when Instagram introduces like a new feature, I'm like, oh, I'll try that out. That sounds kind of fun. And chances are if Instagram is pushing out something, those are the things that they want people to try and they want to feature. So if you start trying them out and adopting it, they may share your stuff like on the explore page. I think you just have to be willing to adapt to change. Like I know a lot of people get mad and complain about things, but I'm like, that doesn't change anything. You got to just do it. Yeah. And Instagram is free. Like a lot of these platforms are free and they have all this like expensive AI to figure out what's engaging on it. So you should learn from them and their computers and kind of go along with it.
Are there any strategies right now that are working for you or that you enjoy? Kind of like, I do this and this, I get on at this time, or what's that for you?
When I started doing that, I feel like my engagement went down. Like someone was telling me about this app called Command, and I think it's free, but they have some paid portion of it where it tells you exactly what time to post. And so I've downloaded the free version and I look at it and sometimes I post at that time, but a lot of times I just post at night, like, cause I normally post as I'm cooking dinner, and it really is kind of real time. Like, I don't plan out ahead, like, oh, I'm going to cook this, and this, and I'll record it a few days ahead. Like, literally, it's like, oh, tonight I'm making this for dinner, and I'm going to show you what I did to make it super simple. And then I'll like post the picture up on Instagram if it's kind of Instagram worthy. So a lot of times it's not, because it's just me cooking our daily dinner. But I'm not really calculating. Like, I don't do the hashtags you're supposed to. But I think if I think it'll be useful and helpful, I hope other people do as well.
Yeah, I love that, because I think that is your way of leading with love, is like, I'm going to do it my way, where I feel inspired, and not create this schedule, but just knowing I'm going to serve my community in this once a week, and giving them a sneak peek behind the scenes as I'm cooking my meals. Just moving from that more inspired place, I think, because a lot of times they're like, what's the best time to post? What hashtags should I use? How many? Where? And then it becomes just... I mean,
clearly there are people who do it really well. Like, I look at some people, like I think what I like to do is there are certain people that I really enjoy following. And I realized I enjoy following them just because I think they're cool, right? And I want to be friends with them, and I want to see what they're doing behind the scenes. And like, one person who I really like following, even though I'm not into fashion at all, is Eva Chen. And she's just so funny. And she just talks about her life as a working mom in New York. She's got these 2 cute kids. And she just talks about kind of her trials and tribulations of juggling all that. But then she'll like shoot herself at the Met Gala at a table with like all of these crazy luminaries. And she's like, oh, look, here's my best friend, Anna Wintour, like it's just, and I was like, oh, I just like to follow her because I think she's really cool. And I think she doesn't put a ton of thought into what she's putting up, or at least it doesn't seem like she does, but she's just really good at making sure the stuff she does post is interesting. And it's not just like, here I am stuck in a taxi. And, it's not this kind of robotic stuff. It's just kind of spur of the moment, fun stuff.
Yeah. And I like the idea of thinking about, for someone else, if they were trying to figure out, how do I want to show up online, is like, who inspires you and how do they show up online, and getting inspired from that versus trying to focus on the other strategies. And it's right. More about connection and inspiration. And I know you have 2 New York Times bestselling books, Nom Nom Paleo, Food for Humans. I've made so many recipes, not me, but my meal prep chef has made so many recipes that are I've eaten so many, so good. And then you also have Ready or Not, 150 plus Make Ahead, Make Over, and Make Now recipes with Nom Nom Paleo. And I'm curious what your book writing process has been like, and how would you compare it, the first book to your second book?
Oh, well, our book writing process is, I think, unlike anybody else's, because we struck a deal with our publisher where we basically do everything. Like, we do have an editor there and they help us with a bunch of stuff, but we have like almost 100% creative control, because Henry designs it cover to cover. He lays out every page. We shoot the recipes here in our house. So it's like a long, complicated process. And the first one, I think we didn't know what we were doing. And that took, I think, like 3 years. And then our second book took like 3 years from the time we started. And I think on the second one, we're like, oh, there are all these things we would change, and we needed to have it all streamlined. And we started that way, but then we kind of devolved back into how we created our first one, which is also very similar to how we do kind of our blog. And so I don't have any, and it's funny because we are working on, a kind of a proposal outline for our third book. And I'm like, yeah, we need to be more structured this time. And like, because most of the time, most traditional cookbooks, you do a book proposal where it's everything is spelled out, like all the recipes that you're going to put in there, and all the chapters and everything. And then you come up with a manuscript, like basically a Word document of all the recipes that have been tested and all the head notes. And then you go and shoot, these hero shots for maybe 60% of the recipes. And then a designer at your publisher puts everything all together. But that's just not how we do it. We kind of do it crazy piecemeal, and then it all comes together. I don't know. It's like,
and I think it's really important to honor your process, because sometimes I think that we get caught up in like, I'm not structured enough, or I'm not, but it's like, you've been able to have best-selling books and building, reaching millions of people through your recipes, doing it your way. And so to honor that mad scientist approach where everything is just like in the kitchen all over the place, I think that to honor that style, it works. And also I love your transparency and just how much time it takes,
it takes a lot of time. And that's why it's taken us so long to even think about this third book, because we're like, wow, this is going to be a lot of work for us. And because Henry has his full-time job and he does all the design, it's like, okay, if you're ready, I'm ready. Like, I don't want to start something because I know that a lot of it is dependent on Henry.
Yeah.
But what's good is our new team member is also a photographer. And so I think that it could work out very nicely.
Yes. And even just having someone in the kitchen with you to be like your sous chef?
Yeah.
Like helping with cleanup, or, there's so many cool, fun ways that you can come up with. And I think that was something we also talked about in the airport lounge. One thing that I have to highlight is I went into my Whole Foods in Walnut Creek and I saw 3 beautiful, colorful bottles sauces of Nom Nom Paleo sauces, of stir fry, sriracha, tandoori sauces. Can you just tell me, how did this come about? Was this an idea that you had on your mind, or did someone approach you that there are paleo-friendly sauces made by you in Whole Food stores?
Oh, well, again, just like all things, this was not a grand plan that we had. People are always like, oh, have you always wanted to come up with your own products? I'm like, no, not at all. Like, we've had a long standing partnership with Whole Foods for many years. And it's just kind of happened organically, because there's this woman that works at Whole Foods that I call our fairy godmother, who is a big supporter of us and loves what we do and lets us kind of keep us and whenever we work together, she lets us be us and she trusts us to be us. And so I love her. And so I think after our second book came out and we're like, oh, let's do some, co-promotion where we'll do some book events at Whole Foods. I think after that was all over, we were at a meeting and she's like, well, have you ever thought of making a product? Like, maybe your magic mushroom powder could be a product. And I was like, no, I've never thought of it. But if you have a way to make that happen, that's awesome. And so that was our first product that we released, was our magic mushroom powder. And it just started in Northern California. And then it got so popular that other regions started asking for it. And so other Whole Foods regions started stocking magic mushroom powder. And so now it's nationwide at Whole Foods. And then after that, she's like, well, what are some other products you'd want to do? I'm like, I don't know, nothing. So then she's like, well, what about your sauces? And I was like, yeah, that's great. If you guys can figure out a way where the sauces are based on my recipes and will be shelf stable until they're opened and will taste just as good as the ones I created, then yeah, that sounds great. And we can approve all of the branding and all that stuff. And so they came up with it and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And so right now the sauces are just a one-time pilot in the West Coast and the Rocky Mountain region. And if they sell really well, then they might become national at Whole Foods. But they're all, just like everything with Nom Nom Paleo, it's always something like, I guess so. I mean, this sounds really awesome and let's just go with it. And we put like 100% of our effort to, develop it and market it. But none of it was pre-planned. And
I love it.
Kind of go like we ride the wave and we rarely ever partner with anybody. Like people always think that like Instant Pot is a partner, but they've never been a partner. They've never paid me. But if there's something I love, I just want to tell people about it. And I feel like this Whole Foods relationship, like the reason why it's been successful is because we love whole foods and we really trust the people that we work with there to make sure that, our brand and our vision is always the same as what we have.
Oh, so beautiful. I think that again, it just comes back to love, right? Of like, this is something I use that I love. And so I just want to share it with more people. I always say,
like the all-purpose stir-fry sauce was originally in our latest cookbook, Ready or Not. But then I was like, this is so useful. And I show people all the time how I use it. I'm just going to put it on the blog because, then they don't have to buy my book, but here's something that they can go to for free and they have the recipe. And then, all 3 of my sauce recipes and magic mushroom powder, it's on the internet. It's not just in my books, it's on the internet. So it's open source.
Yes.
But, I think, it is more useful when it's prepackaged, but you don't have, like, if you don't have a Whole Foods, you don't shop at a Whole Foods or your Whole Foods doesn't stock it, you can still make it.
Yes. Or have a friend ship it to you because I love a pre-made clean sauce that I can just pour. I'm going to be stocking your blog for Instant Pot recipes because I've only made 2 things so far, plus heated some apple cider in there. So I definitely am going to be Google
I love the Instant Pot, but it's not good for all the things. Like people are like, how do you make this? I'm like, don't make that in the Instant Pot. The Instant Pot is for like stews, braises, and applesauce.
Right.
You don't want to be making like roast chicken in the Instant Pot because you will make stewed chicken in the Instant Pot.
Right. Totally. So I'm curious if there's anything else we haven't covered that you'd love to share before we say goodbye.
I don't think so. I feel like we've covered everything.
Yeah, it's been such a joy to have this conversation with you. And one question that I have before we wrap up is there a dream, a desire, maybe a secret wish that has not become a reality yet, even though I know you tend to just kind of follow the inspiration and collaborations, but is there something that you've been wanting to do that you haven't pressed play on yet?
I don't think so. I mean, honest, like in terms of like business, I think in terms of like my life, like I'm really content. Like I really like that I'm in charge of my own career. My kids are, for the most part, happy and cool, and I like hanging out with them. I can pay my bills. So I feel like I'm pretty content where I am.
I love it. And getting to travel and eat food is where you get inspiration, is your main gig, which is amazing.
I love that we have a place in Portland where I can eat in my favorite city in the whole wide world. And that is because of Nom Nom Paleo.
That's amazing. My best friend actually just moved to Portland. So do you have a blog post that links to all your favorite places in Portland?
No, I should write that blog post. I have a hashtag on Instagram.
Okay.
Nom Nom Eats PDX.
Oh, I'm totally checking it out.
Yeah.
Awesome. Love you so much, Michelle, and just your creativity and just putting good open sourced recipes out in the world that fuel our bodies and our hearts.
Thank you. I've had the best time and I've learned so much from you. And I think you're an inspiration.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for your heart and attention and listening to Lead with Love. You can always get the links and resources mentioned in each episode over at leadwithlovepodcast.com so that you can build a sustainable business and live a creative life on your terms. If this message, Leading with Love, resonates with you and you want to take a stand for remembering that there are humans with beating hearts behind the numbers, I would love for you to subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave an honest review. It would mean the world to me, and it also helps more people spread more love in the world, which we really, really need. I also love hearing from you. So as you're listening, take a screenshot, share your favorite takeaway, and tag me on Instagram and Facebook at Jada Selner. I really appreciate you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.